The rain fell gently, like an ancient veil unraveling in time, soaking the stones at the main entrance of the mansion. That house, built of white columns and silences, held in its rooms more than mahogany furniture and inherited tapestries. It sheltered absences, echoes, and secrets buried under the weight of a history no one dared to speak aloud. Donna Eugenia watched from the library window, the porcelain teacup trembling in her hand, steam rising like a silent prayer. Her white hair was tied in a flawless bun, her clothes starched, her pearl earrings from her wedding day, and a slight tremor in her gaze. At 82, she was the portrait of order maintained by force, with vinegar, prayers, and silent maids. But there was a girl, Alice, the only name that broke the silence like a stone against a mirror. She was 7 years old, with a deep sadness in her eyes, inherited from a daughter who died too soon and a father who fled from grief, never to return. Alice wandered barefoot through the house, spoke to the walls and hid behind the curtains, as if searching for another possible childhood. Donna Eugenia didn't know how to handle her. There was no tenderness in her touch, only commands. She wanted a solution, someone to fix it, someone to hush the crying and comb the girl's hair without asking too many questions. Then she arrived. She came on an unhurried morning, brought by a man who spoke quickly and charged dearly. Her name was Alzira. Her skin was dark, a scarf wrapped around her head, her eyes steady like roots that refused to be uprooted. She asked for nothing. She merely nodded when Donna Eugenia explained that she was to care for the girl, bathe her, feed her, and not meddle in matters that didn't concern her. "You'll be well paid, but I want silence," the old woman said, without looking directly at her. Alzira gave a slight nod. She entered the house as one enters sacred ground, her feet respecting each step, as if she could feel beneath the floorboards the stifled cries of a past still pulsing. She said nothing on the first day, nor on the second. She only observed. And gradually, her presence began to change the texture of the house, like the scent of incense that clings to curtains without anyone noticing. At first, Alice hid. She watched the woman from behind furniture, like a frightened animal. But there was something in Alzira's movements that didn't scare her. She moved her hands with care, sang softly when she thought no one was listening, and never tried to touch the girl by force. It was as if she knew that affection, in that place, needed to be untied like an old knot, with time, silence, and care. One afternoon, when the sky hung heavy with grey, Alice appeared at the door of the room where Alzira was folding clothes. She stood still, said nothing. Neither did Alzira. She simply made space beside her on the bed and continued folding as if the girl's presence was expected. Alice approached, sat down, and for the first time she touched the fabric with her small fingers, trying to mimic the woman's movements. They stayed like that for entire minutes in silence, bound by an ancestral gesture of sharing. Little by little, Alice began to speak, first with scattered sentences, then with questions. She wanted to know why Alzira wore a scarf on her head, why her hands were so large, why her eyes held that glint of someone who had seen too much. Alzira answered with stories, not with easy answers. She spoke of a river that knew the name of every stone, of a woman who carried the world on her back and still smiled, of a drum that made the heart dance even when it hurt. Donna Eugenia began to notice something strange. Alice was more talkative, more curious. She asked things she hadn't dared before. One day she found her granddaughter lying beside Alzira, both staring at the ceiling as if they could see invisible stars. "What is this talk?" she asked sharply. Alzira merely stood up. She didn't answer. She took a brush and began combing the girl's hair, unhurried, as if praying. "Remember our agreement," the old woman warned. "I remember," Alzira said, her voice low but firm. "And you?" That response hung in the air, like a leaf refusing to fall. Donna Eugenia didn't know what to say. She returned to her tea, her portraits, and her memories she dared not open. The days passed. Alzira began taking Alice to the garden. They planted things together. The girl spoke to the flowers, buried seeds as if hiding small secrets in the earth. Alzira taught her the names of plants, showed her how the root was more important than the flower, and she told stories, many stories, some that didn't even seem of this world. Stories that spoke of freedom, of courage, of women who did not bow. One morning Alice entered the library with a drawing. It was an immense tree, with roots that looked like arms. She handed it to her grandmother without a word. Donna Eugenia looked unsettled. The girl's strokes were bold, and there was a woman with a scarf at the top of the tree, arms outstretched. "What is this?" she asked. "It's Alzira's tree," the granddaughter replied. "She said every house has a hidden tree. Ours does too." Donna Eugenia didn't answer. She felt a chill. There was a tree, indeed, an old jequitiba planted by her great-grandmother at the edge of the slave quarters, now buried under cement and forgotten. That night, she dreamed of an empty house. She walked through the corridors and heard chants coming from the basement. When she descended, she found women dancing, eyes closed, as if calling someone back. She woke up sweating. She rose and went to the window. In the garden, Alzira stood still, gazing at the sky, as if she knew the house was beginning to remember. The next morning, Donna Eugenia woke earlier than usual. She walked through the house as if stepping on a past that threatened to awaken. She ran her hand over the walls, the paintings, the gilded frame of an old mirror where her mother smiled eternally in a lace dress. As she descended the stairs, she heard music that wasn't from the radio. It was a low ancestral chant coming from the kitchen. Alzira was singing words in a language the old woman didn't recognize, or perhaps didn't want to. Alice was dancing, barefoot with loose hair and a face light as one who had discovered her own laughter. There was something sacred in that scene, something that both wounded and healed. "What's happening here?" Donna Eugenia asked, more frightened than angry. Alzira kept singing, not out of defiance, but because that moment didn't belong to the old woman. It belonged to the girl, and Alice needed to dance. Donna Eugenia stepped back. She returned to her room and locked the door. She sat at her vanity and stared at her reflection. For a moment she saw her mother's face, stern, unyielding, and behind her shadows, women who moved silently, with lowered eyes, carrying trays and pains that were never heard. She felt a pressure in her chest. And for the first time in years she cried, not out of sadness, but for something she couldn't name. That afternoon, she called Alzira to talk. The woman entered the study with calm steps. She sat only when invited. "You're crossing boundaries," the old woman said, trying to regain control of her voice. "I'm only caring for her," Alzira replied, not lowering her eyes, "as I was asked. But in your way, with those stories, those songs, those ideas. Have you ever asked what she feels when she sings with me?" Donna Eugenia didn't answer. She pressed her fingers together. Alzira continued, "I didn't come to teach disobedience, if that's what you fear. But the girl was broken. And you don't mend a soul with orders. You need to listen." There was a heavy silence. The old woman wanted to shout to order the woman to leave, but she couldn't, because deep down she knew. She knew the house was stirring, that the windows were opening, that the past was knocking at the door, and that for the first time she didn't know how to shut it. In the days that followed, Alice changed even more. She began writing letters to her mother, knowing they could never be delivered. She buried the papers in the garden next to the seeds she planted with Alzira. At night she asked for stories before bed. She wanted to hear about Alzira's childhood, about the red earth of the countryside, about the midwife grandmother who said every birth was also a reunion with the dead. "Do you have a mother, Alzira?" she asked once. "I had one, and she still lives in me," she replied. "And a grandmother. Many. Some I never even met. But they carry me." Alice smiled and hugged the woman tightly. Donna Eugenia watched from afar. She felt envy, guilt, nostalgia. She felt, at last, and that unsettled her. One night, rummaging through an old wardrobe, she found a wooden box she hadn't opened in decades. Inside were yellowed letters, a red ribbon, and her mother's diary. She began to read. The first pages spoke of everyday life, parties, weddings, births. But in a hidden passage, she found a name, Justina. "Justina sings to me when I can't sleep. She says my grandmother's blood runs in her, even if I pretend not to see. Justina taught me to cry without making a sound. Justina knows." Donna Eugenia trembled. She remembered the woman who cared for her when she was small. Dark skin, quiet demeanor, enormous hands that soothed fevers and combed her hair with patience. She had always thought of her as a maid, never as family. But there, in her mother's words, Justina took on another form. She was a guardian. She was a root. The next day, Donna Eugenia asked Alzira to accompany her to the basement. She wanted to show her something. The woman didn't question her. They descended together step by step to the depths of the house. There, hidden under a tarp and old boxes, was a chest. The old woman opened it with trembling hands. Inside were ancient objects, a beaded necklace, a hand-embroidered cloth, a faded photograph. "Do you recognize this?" Donna Eugenia asked. Alzira took the necklace in her hands. She closed her eyes for a moment. "This is from before, long before me, but it's mine too." "It was Justina's," the old woman said, almost in a whisper. "She cared for me as you care for Alice, and I forgot her." Alzira didn't respond. The pain that spans generations isn't healed with a sentence, but there was a gesture. She placed the necklace back in the chest with care. That night, something shifted between them. They didn't become friends, they didn't need to, but there was respect, a silent acknowledgement, as if they had unearthed something buried beneath the floorboards of time. In the days that followed, Donna Eugenia began to observe more. She sat in the garden and listened to the stories. One day she even helped water the plants. She exchanged glances with Alzira, sometimes even a smile. Alice drew more. Now she made portraits. One of them showed the three of them together, holding hands with a background that looked like an immense tree. One Sunday, the girl handed her grandmother a piece of paper. "It's the tree of our house, Grandma. Alzira helped me draw it, but I painted it." In the drawing, besides the tree, there was a small ladder leading to a door in the roots. Donna Eugenia stared at it for minutes. Then she stood, went to the garden, and without a word, began to dig. Alzira and Alice followed her, and there, near the rosebush, they found the stones of the old Jequitiba. The roots were still alive. Donna Eugenia knelt. She cried without shame. She asked for forgiveness, not in words, but with hands dirtied by earth. For weeks the garden became the heart of the house. Every morning Donna Eugenia went there with a small cushion to kneel before the roots. She said nothing. She just stayed, eyes closed, as if listening to the voices buried in the ground. Alice brought water, flowers, dried leaves that she turned into small altars. Alzira watched, respecting each one's time. She never rushed, never corrected. She knew healing doesn't obey clocks. One morning, Alice asked to plant a sapling next to the Jequitiba. "I want it to grow with it, Grandma." Alzira said some trees only wake up when others arrive. Donna Eugenia nodded. She took the small sapling with frail hands and dug with her fingers. Alzira knelt beside her, silent. Alice stood between them, holding the sapling like a secret. When they finished, Alzira took an embroidered cloth from her pocket. In it, she wrapped 3 dark, smooth seeds, like small stones. She handed one to each. "Keep them with you. They're seeds of memory. Plant them when you feel the time is right." Alice kept hers in a small box. Donna Eugenia hesitated, but then placed her seed in an old locket she always wore around her neck, with her daughter's photo. It made her tremble. For the first time, the memories didn't hurt. They whispered. One night, the girl had a fever. High, sudden, as if her body were trying to expel something forgotten. Alzira stayed by her side the whole time, changing damp cloths, singing softly, calling the names of ancient mothers. Donna Eugenia wanted to help, but her hands shook. "She'll be fine," Alzira said, looking into the old woman's eyes. "Are you sure?" "I have faith, and that's older than certainty." Alice slept, sweaty, with serene eyes. In the morning she opened her eyes and smiled. She asked for porridge, asked for a story. She was back. That day Donna Eugenia entered Alzira's room with a box in her hands. "I want to give you this," she said, holding it out. Alzira opened it slowly. Inside were the beaded necklace, the embroidered cloth, and Justina's faded photo. The old woman took a deep breath. "It was hers. I didn't know how much it mattered. Now I do. It's yours by right." Alzira said nothing. She closed the box, held it to her chest, and closed her eyes for a moment. It was more than a gesture. It was restitution. More days passed, and one afternoon, as the sun fell golden over the curtains, Donna Eugenia called the girl and the woman to the main room. She sat in the armchair where she had so often given orders, where she had commanded silences and pretended not to hear the creaks of memory. "I want to tell a story," she said, looking at them both. Alice approached, curious. Alzira sat beside her, hands resting on her lap. "When I was a girl, there was a woman in this house. Her name was Justina. She carried me in her arms, combed my hair, told me stories I pretended to forget. I grew up thinking she was just a maid. That's what they called her. But now I know She was a root, and I was ungrateful. The words came slowly, as if they had waited a lifetime to surface. Today I understand this house wasn't just mine. It was hers too, and now it's yours, Alzira, and Alice's, and all those who came before. I can't change the past, but I can acknowledge it. There was a silence. Then Alzira stood, walked to the old woman and held her hands. Acknowledging is planting. Alice then pulled from her blouse the seed she had kept since the day of the Jequitiba. She handed it to her grandmother. I think it's time to plant mine. They went to the garden, the three of them. They dug together. They planted the seed, and beside it, they placed a small sign that Alice wrote in crooked letters, "For those who came before, for those who will come." The days passed. And something in the house changed for good. It wasn't just the different smell of food or the discreet chants coming from the kitchen. It was the time, which now seemed to breathe, the air, which no longer weighed on the shoulders, and the old portraits, which seemed to look with less severity. One afternoon, with a gentle breeze, Donna Eugenia received a letter. It was from her younger brother, whom she hadn't seen in decades. He said he'd heard of the changes, that he wanted to visit. She hesitated, but then replied with few words, "The house has changed, so have I." The following week she organized a lunch. She invited neighbors, relatives, even former employees. She prepared everything with Alzira and Alice. The table was set in the garden under the shade of the Jequitiba. In the center, an empty plate with flowers. "For Justina," the old woman said softly. During the lunch, Alice read aloud a text she had written with Alzira. "This house is not made only of walls and inheritances. It is made of undone silences, of firm steps, of hands that cared without being seen. Today we say, we are seeing, we are listening, and we are remembering." At the end there was timid applause, but full of truth, and as the sun began to set, Alzira stepped away for a moment. She went to the back of the garden. She buried the box with the necklace, the cloth, and the photo beneath a new sapling. "It will bloom," she said. Donna Eugenia found her there. "Why did you bury it?" "Because it's a seed, memory that's planted, not displayed." The two stood in silence. Then the old woman took the locket from her neck, opened it, took out the small seed, and handed it to Alzira. "You plant it." Alzira took it, made a small hole nearby, buried the seed, and on top placed a small white stone. "Now it's complete." That night the house slept lightly. Alice dreamed of Justina, who combed her hair and said, "Now you can run, the ground is firm." Alzira dreamed of her grandmother, smiling. Donna Eugenia didn't dream, but for the first time, she slept without guilt. And at dawn in the garden, a small red flower bloomed where before there was only silence.